Welcome to F101 with Friends, your pit stop for all things Formula One. Whether you're here for the stats, the memes, or just figuring out what a chicane is, we've got you covered. Buckle up, because the fun starts right now. Hi everyone, my name is Nisha, a newbie F1 girlie who is desperate to make more friends so that I can talk about this sport all the time. Each week, a new guest will join me on this journey, from seasoned F1 fans to other curious newcomers, and we will explore what it is about this million-dollar sport at gravity-defying speeds that we just can't stop watching. We'll try to break it all down in a way that's fun, relatable, and hopefully try to explain some of the tech talk. Pre-season testing just got done. The teams have had a chance to see if all of their drawings and plans translate into actual speed and performance. We are a few days away from the first race of the season, and there is excitement in the air. But before we get into all of that, we first need to know the track. And to help me with this is ardent Max Verstappen fan, Aditi. Welcome to the show, Aditi.
Hi, Nisha. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be on the show. I'm so excited to be on this podcast.
I'm so glad to have you here because we really need a lot of long-time F1 fans on the show.
Longish. Yeah.
Longer than me, at least.
How is that? How is that longer than you? I thought you've been listening to it for a while.
No, I just started following it in 2023.
Oh, damn! That's a lot. You've got a lot
24 was the first full season that I watched.
Oh, you've got a lot of research for 23 then. I have to give you that.
Thank you. Just so our listeners can get to know you a little bit better, Aditi, what got you into F1?
I would say that it started with Drive to Survive. I binge watched a lot of episodes in the lockdown and just loved the thrill of it, loved watching all the races, and I got sucked into it. I got sucked into F1 from all directions. I have been talking about F1 to everyone I know.
Isn't it nice that we have now a platform to just talk about F1?
Yeah, just talk about F1 with all your friends. Tell all your friends about these podcasts, about all our episodes, and do listen and join us. Please, that's exactly what we want.
That is exactly it. We are desperate for more F1 friends. That's why we started this podcast.
Exactly.
Please come join this community.
Please come join us.
I know that both of us just binge watched Drive to Survive and it was very exciting, but I'm going to avoid some spoilers here. So what would you say at a dinner party with all of your favorite F1 drivers?
I would say that I wish I was at the dinner party, which was there last season. Which though I wish I was a fly on the wall, listening to all the conversations that were going around the entire room. I really wanted to know that did Max and George even say hello to each other? Did they have any? Did he pass the salt to each other? Did that happen? I would like to know. I would like to be a part of that. But then I would also like to ask them that, is anyone claustrophobic here? Are you guys drivers claustrophobic? Do you have, do you sometimes find it difficult to just sit in that car for about 10 hours or longer? And then, do you get suffocated? I would like to know that.
Are you claustrophobic?
I am claustrophobic. So I really hate getting into a lift. It's at peak time in office. I hate getting into a lift and just it feels suffocating.
I don't know if you remember when this happened, like a couple of years back when the drivers were in a lift and it got stopped in between, like half the grid was in the lift. And then I think it was Ricardo. He had his phone out like, guess the race is not starting today because we're all stuck here.
It was Danny. It was Sergio Perez. It was, who was that? It was, I think, both the Force India drivers. So that was all, so all of them were there and he was just like smiling at all of them. I bet one of them had to be like, oh, please, can the lift just start? I don't want to die here. I would rather be in a crash on the racetrack, but here, I don't want to be in this lift. I feel that. I'm like, I don't want to be in this lift. Please, let's just get out of here soon.
So let's talk about the Australian Grand Prix, right? We are excited for the first one to come out. It's the first of the season, and if you are in India, you have to wake up at 9:30 a.m. this Sunday to watch the race. It is held at the Albert Park circuit around Albert Park Lake in the suburb of Albert Park in Melbourne, just in case you missed that name. So here's some quick facts about the race. The first race was held in 1996, and the circuit is partly a street circuit and partly purpose-built track. Drivers will do 58 laps around this 5.278 kilometer circuit, which has 14 corners. The current lap record is held by Charles Leclerc in 2024, with the time of 1 minute 19 seconds and 813 milliseconds. In 2024, Max Verstappen was the pole sitter, but he had to DNF because of a brake failure. The winner, in the words of Crofty on Sky Sports, was Carlos Sainz minus appendix, full of determination. Australia used to be the traditional season opener. More recently, it has been the races in the Middle East. We will get to those a bit later to accommodate for Ramadan timing. So, Aditi, you've seen a picture of this track, right?
Yeah.
If you could use an everyday object, how would you describe it? What does it look like to you?
It looks like I'm holding a chicken wing.
It does, right? It does look like especially one of those KFC ad chicken wings.
Yeah, like the spicy chicken wings it does look like one of those.
So imagine that you're holding a chicken wing, right? The start-finish point is where your thumb is at the bottom. The track follows the wing through the fat meat part, travels all the way around and across to where your index is placed, and then turns back to your thumb. The track has about 14 turns, and some of these corners are named after former F1 drivers. So let us talk you through this particular track. Sector 1, the start-finish straight, is 800 meters long and leads into a sharp right turn, which is turn 1, followed by a left-hand sweep at turn 2 or Brabham. The track then moves on a slightly curved straight, which is the first DRS zone, and then bends perpendicular to the right at turn 3 and another left at turn 4. The middle section features flowing corners and a couple of quick chicanes, making it more like a wavy, winding shape.
Sector 2 of the track starts at turn 6, or the peak of the chicken wing, and goes all the way down to turn 9, or where your index finger might be. Turn 8, where the second DRS zone starts, is also called as Lauda, and the curve up to turn 9 is Lakeside Drive. The final sector tightens up, with some sharp left-right bends at turn 9 and 10. This is typically a great place to sit because the cars will come screaming down a DRS zone, barely having time to keep their places, and are immediately pushed into the next DRS zone. This would be exciting. Just watching.
Yeah, it is. It would be an exciting place to sit and watch. Just like you think someone, because in that second DRS zone, someone might have overtaken.
Yeah.
And you think they've got their place, but right into the next DRS zone, they're like, oh, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Here is where I can overtake you. And then, it could be a nice point.
Sector 3 is actually where the races are often won or lost because it's very technical, high-stakes sequence of corners that demands a lot of precision, patience, and a perfectly balanced car. The drivers approach turn 11 at over 280 kilometers per hour. They flick the car right and immediately curve right for turn 12 or Ascari. Someone could lose their nerve and end up in the grass or the barriers over here. Then you are hit with a sharp left, almost perpendicular at turn 13 or Stewart. A quick right turn at turn 14 or Prost. If you nail it, you carry incredible momentum into the next straight, which is back to the start-finish straight.
When you watch a race, you will hear the commentators say purple sector, green sector, or that some driver is setting yellows. Basically, each track is divided into 3 sectors, and the teams measure the time that the driver takes to complete that sector. The colors are used to indicate the performance in different parts of the track during a session. Here's what they all mean. Purple sector means that the driver has set the fastest time of anyone in that particular sector. A purple sector is the ultimate benchmark. If a driver goes purple in all 3 sectors, they set the fastest lap of the session. A green sector means that the driver has set their personal best time in that part of the track, but it's not the fastest overall. It shows that they're improving. A yellow sector means that the driver has not improved on their previous best time in that part of the track. This could be due to a mistake, tire wear, traffic, or changing track conditions. Have you noticed, these sectors, and when it starts popping up during qualifying, is when you really start paying attention to, and this is like the last 2 minutes of, like, I think it's Q3, okay, and the last 2 minutes, and everybody's trying to set in, and you're like, okay, I see one purple sector, I see another green, and then you're like, okay, who is it going to be who's going to get the fastest lap? I'm like, okay, is it a green? But he has 3 sectors in it, so he's like, okay, green, purple, purple, and you're like, okay, that means he's getting the fastest lap.
I don't know how you watch the race. Usually, what I do is like I have my tab open, and that's where I have all the driver data, because F1 TV has that option.
Oh.
And what you said, right? Especially at that Q3, when you're waiting to see who's going to set the fastest lap, and you can see all the like colors changing. It is the most exciting thing.
It is. It's like you're just hoping that your driver that you are really rooting for, that is Max in this case, obviously, he's just like, okay, Max, he sometimes he's got the fastest lap, and he's like, no, that is not enough. I need to give it another try. And then he's like, okay, he's got purple on his own sector. I mean, he's like one upping or one up of his own timing.
That Mad Max mentality is insane. I don't know if I would call that healthy, but it is beautiful to watch. It's beautiful to watch him just beat himself. Oof, it's amazing.
How good am I? No, I need to be better than what I was even in college, like even in the last thing. I need to be better than this. That's what that's his that crazy mentality, I think.
It is. It really is. So now that we have a picture of the circuit, which is the chicken wing, as Aditi described it, allow me to take you on a sensory journey around Albert Park. So imagine sitting in an F1 car, strapped in tight, the roar of the engine vibrating through your chest. The race begins, full throttle down the main straight, wind screaming past you as you approach turn 1, a sharp right-hander. You slam the brakes before flicking it into turn 2. Here, acceleration is key to blasting down the first DRS zone. Now you brace for turn 3, a heavy braking zone. The tires screech as you fight to keep control through this tight right-hander. The left-hand turn 4 follows quickly, forcing you to thread the needle between precision and aggression. Through the next flowing section, the car glides through turn 5, a fast left-hand kink at turn 6, then comes turn 7 and 8, a rapid right-left combination, and then you go screaming down to the second DRS zone. Now the heart-pounding moment. Turns 9 and 10, a hard-braking zone into a tight chicane. You nail the exit, you launch into one of the fastest parts of the track. Next, you turn right and thread through the high-speed chicane of turns 11 and 12, narrowly avoiding the grass. The final sector, turns 13 and 14, tight corners that test your braking precision and patience. You ease into the last turn at 14, feeling the grip hold for one final launch down the straight. The checkered flag waves, the crowd erupts. You've just conquered Albert Park. So, Aditi, how do you feel?
Wow, just goosebumps. Just imagining myself, being right there, seeing the cars pass the checkered flag, and it would be so amazing. Just, you can just feel it would feel so nice to just be there and enjoy and wait for the cars, and then you see them zoom past you. Wow, what a feeling that must be.
It would be amazing, especially in Australia with that rowdy crowd, right? That's just screaming at the top of their voice. It would be pretty fun. So let me pull you back into the past a little bit and understand how this race came to be. The first Australian race ever took place at Phillip Island in 1928. And since then, the venue has changed 23 times, including an 11-year run in Adelaide. After the FIA stepped in, Albert Park was the official host of the Formula One race since 1996. In fact, just 4 months before that, the drivers had finished the last race in Adelaide as part of the non-FIA championship.
The Australians were not too happy about this construction. In 1996, a lot of the trees had to be cut and there was a disruption to livelihood. They protested it, but then lost out and the deal was struck. This was mostly thanks to Ron Walker, an Australian businessman who held negotiations with our beloved eccentric grandpa, Bernie Ecclestone. Following Walker's death in January 2018, the main straight on the track was renamed the Walker Straight in honor of the man who helped bring the event to the city.
This circuit is steeped in motorsport history. It's the only venue to host the Australian Grand Prix in both World Championship and non-World Championship formats on 2 occasions during the 1950s. This early version of the track was shorter and it ran in the anti-clockwise direction. Australia was traditionally the season opener. This is where Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, and former Ferrari champion Kimi Raikkonen debuted. This year, we'll see about 6 rookies debuting here. This circuit has actually been very kind to the Ferraris over the years, with 14 wins. It's also provided them with a launchpad for title success, especially at the height of Michael Schumacher's domination in the Ferrari in early 2000s. He was a 4-time winner at Albert Park. The Australian Grand Prix circuit has had a lot of amazing moments. In 2019, Mercedes was doing everything in its power to give their number 1 driver Lewis Hamilton his next win, which meant that their number 2 driver, Valtteri Bottas, was stuck playing second fiddle and just listening to team orders. Fans started questioning his talent. And then in 2019, at the Australian Grand Prix, he put all those rumours to rest. He won by a massive 20-second lead, leaving his teammate behind, and when he won, he said the words,
Do you think Valtteri Bottas would get a chance or would get into a Mercedes car this year? I know he's the reserve driver, so the chances of that are quite less. But
see, it would be nice to see him back in a good car.
Oh yeah,
like we saw him struggle in the Sauber. It'd be nice to see him at least for one of the races. But then, if I say that, then I'm meaning that either Kimi or George will not be able to attend a race, which I don't know why that would happen. They would have to fall sick or something, and I don't want to wish ill on any of those.
Have they had their appendix removed? That is the only way that I see it. We need to check that.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Maybe that's an opportunity for him. And then he can do his whole campaign of what's next. So he's like, what's next? And he gets into the car. He's like, that is next. Speaking of team orders, in 1998, Mika Häkkinen won the Australian Grand Prix in controversial circumstances. So before the race, him and his McLaren teammate, David Coulthard, had decided that whoever had the apex at turn 1 would be allowed to win the race. Basically team orders. Häkkinen led the race from pole position, but at some point he misheard a call to come into the pits. This was allegedly caused by a fan who hacked into the team's pit to car radio. Häkkinen lost the lead to Coulthard, but the sporting teammate moved aside in the last 2 laps, letting Häkkinen win. This move was investigated by the World Motorsport Council, and the concept of team orders continued to cause controversy. This was eventually banned ahead of the 2003 season. Yes, all of that gets scrapped now with Papaya Rules. Papaya Rules was such a big deal in the last race, the last season. If there were no Papaya Rules, I feel like the Papaya Rules that were even there did not make sense.
Yeah.
There were no clear orders.
Yes.
I understand that this is banned, but there were no clear orders. McLaren did not do that well.
Yeah, they really didn't. I don't know. Do you think that if they did it well, Norris would have had a chance to win?
I think so.
Really?
I really think so. At one point, it was... Yeah, I really think that Lando could have won the Drivers' Championship. And it would have been McLaren and Lando winning.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't happen that way. So that was good for Max. Good for our Max. If you realize towards the end, I think Lando was doing really well. He had broken over the curse of no win. What was it? No win Lando?
Lando no wins.
Lando no wins. And then people started saying that, you won't be able to hold position till turn 1. And even that, he's like, okay, I did that. And then he was winning races, and they really do have a better car. Even this year, right? You've seen testing. They do have a better car. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, I'm scared. There's
2 things that come to my mind. The first is last year, Max, I know that we were talking about Lando and potentially McLaren being a part of the championship, but if you remember, that conversation started happening only towards like when we got closer to the summer break. But before that, all the races that were there, Max had pretty much won everything. Right? So he had a huge lead in terms of points. And on top of that, Lando started doing well once that pressure of, okay, I'm not going to win, that went away. Like after Brazil. After Brazil, Lando was doing very well. So,
no pressure honestly, then. Yeah, he's like, okay.
Yeah. Even with papaya rules, I don't think he would have won last year. This year, though, I mean, there's a chance.
Would they still support Oscar? Like, would they say that in the start of the year, if Oscar's winning more races than Lando, okay, suppose he wins like the starting 4 races, we're hoping that Max is sick at this point, but then he wins 4 races. Do you think McLaren are going to be like, yes, okay, we are backing you? I don't see that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know if they would support Oscar. I also don't know if Oscar is like there yet. Because Lando does have very quick qualifying pace and like he can be very fast. So I don't know. It's gonna be exciting to watch.
It is definitely going to be exciting. And this year, I think this year is when everything's still the same, right? And 2026 is when the regulations change, and that's going to be a different story then. Yeah.
So, another historical moment at the Australian Grand Prix, it came in 2016 with one of the most violent crashes for Fernando Alonso. On lap 17, Alonso was behind Gutierrez in Haas's first ever race. Alonso was going nowhere. He attempted to overtake on the outside at turn 3 by swooping around the Mexican. Only this time, Alonso's reaction was a fraction too slow and he rammed into the back of the Haas. Out of control, his McLaren flipped as it disintegrated, somersaulting through the vertical with a helpless Alonso bracing for that 45G impact that he knew was coming. He says he remembered that his mother would be watching, so even though he had broken ribs and a punctured lung, he walked out, showing his mom that he was okay. I'm sure this video comes up all the time on Instagram. It's called I'm Okay Mom. Definitely check that out.
Something a bit fun. Back in 2003, there was a press conference where some pranksters asked a question to Colombian driver Juan Pablo Montoya. They pissed him off so much he left the conference. The question was, you gotta listen for it, brace yourself. The question was, I have one question for Juan. Just a hypothetical one. Juan? As the Wonder Kid, the rising number Juan wonders, should Juan win only one in 1 year? Would Juan want to have that Juan in round 1? What? Oh my God. Of course, this wasn't the only question. It escalated, so his reaction is understandable. A person going from smiling about it, finding it amusing, to getting super annoyed by the end of the conference.
I know. And honestly, it's funny now, but I feel like if I was Juan Pablo Montoya, I would be pretty mad at these people. Like, especially considering I've just finished a race. I am tired. I don't want to do this. Oh, I have to talk about Brawn GP. This scrappy team barely had money to start their race, but they came with a magical aero invention called the double diffuser, which led them to victory in 2009. And Australia was their magical start. I highly recommend watching the Brawn GP documentary. It's got Keanu Reeves in it. He's the one who's narrating it. It is amazing. I fully fell in love with Jenson Button there.
Jenson Button is with whom right now?
He's a Sky Sports pundit, I think.
Ah, right. Yeah, that's what I've seen. Okay.
Also, a good video to check out is the Lap 1 chaos in the 2002 Australian GP. Words just don't do it justice. It's just cars and bits flying everywhere. So definitely go check that out. So let's come further into the present. And I am talking about last year. Australia was the third race of the season. Max Verstappen had already won the first 2 races and he was on pole in Australia. Everyone is already singing, sing it with me. Do, 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 do.
Max Verstappen.
But unfortunately, the unthinkable happens. He has a technical issue and has to retire the car because it was literally on fire. Sainz is now immediately switching his radio station to And he decided that he's going to win the race.
He was like he had won the last 3 races till then, right? The first 2 races he had won. Max had won the first 2 races. And we are like, okay, this is going to be this is going to be a run over of 2023, repeat 2023. No risk involved.
Yep.
Who knew? Around the lap 16 mark, Hamilton's car decided it's had enough of him and gave up on the side of the road. It brought out the virtual safety car for the first time. Meanwhile, in the back, we had Kevin Magnussen in Haas putting up a mean defense, creating a DRS train and helping his teammate try to get the last points place. I think the FIA banned this move after this race. And looking at the way the season went, I think, Kevin got a race ban somewhere after the summer break. Yeah. He had his moves.
Yeah. He did. I really thought that after so when you do a race ban, you've collected 12 points and that's why you have a race ban, right? So when you do that one race ban, basically your entire points, everything is cleared. And I really thought with some 4 or 5 races left, Kevin would just come back on a clean slate and be an absolute menace on track because he was leaving the sport as well. What does it matter? But he was not. He was quite well behaved. I was quite
disappointed. Disappointed. We needed more. We needed to add more moves to ban. FIA create more list of moves to be banned. They should have just named it after him. That hey, this is the Kevin Magnussen move that is now stands banned.
So in Australia, with 10 laps to go, we saw George Russell trying to overtake Fernando Alonso and was suddenly thrown off the track. His car flipped over to the side and he was just lying there in the middle of the track screaming, "Red flag, red flag." Initially, we all thought that this was Russell just being overconfident and then missing a curve. But post-race, Alonso was handed a 20-second penalty added to his race time. After the stewards deemed that he had driven in an extraordinary manner while being chased by Russell. This is what contributed to the Mercedes driver's accident.
Yeah, so his car was upside down and then he was screaming red flag, red flag. But we just thought that, he's just being very loud and, being the class monitor and dramatic about it. Class monitor. Every time I see George, I think of class monitor. Right? I don't know why.
He has such class monitor face.
And he was also the
GPDA director.
Yeah. Right. So it sort of just made sense. He's like, okay, he has a class monitor. He's screaming red flag, red flag. You're like, okay, why is he making a big deal out of it? But no, there were cars behind him.
Yeah. It was, in fact, I think the car that was right behind him, luckily there was a little bit of a distance between him and the car behind him. Otherwise, it would have been quite bad because the FIA took a very long time to call it out call out the virtual safety car for that time, right? Yeah. There was no yellow flags. There was no flag.
There were no flags.
So it was, it is kind of scary. Fine, we'll give that one to George. Speaking of GPDA directors, the other GPDA director that we have, Carlos Sainz, he was the person who won the race with his teammate behind, and he said the most beautiful words, "Tell Charles to come closer. We celebrate together. Life is incredible, no?" And honestly, my heart cried a little bit for the two teammates who had really bonded over the past 4 years. The Ferrari 1-2 was followed by the McLaren boys with Norris and hometown hero Oscar Piastri. Did I miss anything, Aditi?
The Williams team stole all the headlines on the opening day of the 2024 Australian Grand Prix. A heavy crash for Alex Albon wrote off his Williams car, and with the team having no spare chassis, Logan Sargent was forced to hand his car over to his teammate for the remainder of the weekend. It was Alex's birthday as well, and I remember Alex Jake's comment, "Happy birthday, Alexander Albon. Your present, Logan Sargent's car." That must have hurt.
It was savage. That was savage.
Terrible. Not only have you had a lot of crashes, you've had, you are really draining the funds of an already cash crunched team, and then you don't get a chance to race anymore, and you hand over your car to the teammate. I mean, that's what they say, right? I mean, the competition is is initially between your teammates in a Formula One team, and then it's against the others. But then here it's just you're just giving off your car. You're not even getting a chance to race in this. Chance. Yeah, that was sad. I felt bad for him.
Me too. I did feel bad for him. He had to give up his car, not even because it was his fault. Like his teammate crashed into the race, and then for some reason he had to give up his car. It was kind of sad. I mean, he's not in F1 anymore. He's quit his. Logan has quit his. He went to some other championship and he quit that also.
Oh, he's quit that. I think. Oh, he's done.
Just chilling at home. He's like, I don't want to see another car for the rest of my life. I'm done. So, preparing for the Australian Grand Prix requires Formula One teams to meticulously plan for the unique challenges. The circuit's semi-permanent nature, combining public roads and purpose-built sections, demand a specific approach to car setup and strategy. Melbourne is one of the fastest tracks on the calendar, so a very responsive front end of the car is needed so that the drivers have the confidence to really throw themselves into the quick corners, especially the fast chicane that forms a quick left-right at turn 11 and 12. This is usually a plus point for Max in the Red Bull. The track is a mix of fast straights and technical corners, which means medium to high downforce configurations.
According to AccuWeather, it would be around 27 degrees, which is fairly hot, and the track temperature will be hotter still. So expect a lot of tire degradation. Most teams will go for a two-stop strategy, and they have to keep in mind that they'll lose at least 20 seconds coming in for a pit stop. But this race also has a 67% chance of a safety car and a 50% chance of a virtual safety car. And the teams might try to hold on and, so that they could get a cheap pit stop.
So, Aditi, wait, why don't we explain why a pit stop takes 20 seconds and what exactly is a cheap pit stop?
A pit stop takes about 20 seconds because it's not just the 2-second tire change. Drivers must slow down, navigate the pit lane speed limit, which is about 80 km per hour, stop in their pit box, then rejoin the track without exceeding track limits. A cheap pit stop happens when a driver can pit without losing as many positions. This can happen under a safety car or a virtual safety car, when everyone is going slower and has to follow each other.
Got it. Each year, most of the trackside fencing, pedestrian overpasses, grandstands, and other motorsport infrastructure are erected approximately 2 months before the Grand Prix weekend, and they're removed within 6 weeks after the event. This Grand Prix regularly draws crowds of around 270,000 spectators, with 2024 drawing a record crowd of 452,000 spectators. We expect this to keep growing until 2037 when the official contract ends. This is also the home race for Oscar Piastri of McLaren, and I've seen on his socials that apparently his grandma brings rum balls and lamingtons for everyone, so I guess we expect to see that this year as well. We will, of course, miss Daniel Ricciardo, our original Australian hero.
Did you hear that Daniel Ricciardo has started his own podcast, by the way?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice. Do you think he'd be willing to join our?
I think we should try to get him on it. We're like, hey, we are friends. You are F1, we are friends. This is a good combination.
You are F1, we are friends is the best.
That is it. You are F1, we are friends. Why don't you get onto our podcast?
Yes, done. I'm writing that email right now as we speak. As you gear up for the first race of the season, the commentators will throw around some F1 jargon that might sound a bit confusing. Here's a quick breakdown of key phrases that you will hear during the race. Clean air and dirty air. So clean air is when a car is running at the front with no one directly ahead of it. It gets undisturbed airflow, which helps to maximize the downforce and the grip. All drivers want clean air. The car does better in clean air. When a car is closely following another, the turbulent air from the car in front reduces the downforce and makes cornering trickier. It's one of the main reasons that overtaking can be tough.
Well, it's not always a bad thing because you could get a slipstream or get a tow. A car follows closely behind another to get a speed advantage. As a car moves at high speed, it pushes air out of the way, creating an area of lower air resistance behind it. A car following closely can enter this pocket of reduced drag, allowing it to go faster while using less energy.
I don't know if you remember, a couple of years back, when we were talking about dirty air. Dirty air is a concept, right? It's not It's not like they're actually throwing dirt at you.
Correct.
However, When Daniel Ricciardo used to drive and he knew that someone was there behind him, he would purposely like go off into the side of the track a little bit so that when there's someone behind him and they actually get dirty air. Like he will use the wheels to throw mud and stones or whatever right back at whoever was behind him. So that their like vision gets compromised, or at least they get freaked out about, oh my god, what is this cheese?
There's dirt in his car, basically. The guy behind him gets dirt in his car.
He took dirty air to the next level. Few tenths off or few hundredths off. Now, the difference in lap times are usually counted in the milliseconds. So let's take an example of driver 1 finishing a lap in 1 minute, 10 seconds and 543 milliseconds, right? A few tenths off means there's a difference of about 0.1 to 0.9 seconds. So in this example, if driver 1 is doing 1:10.543, if driver 2 finishes at 1:10.843, that means they are 3 tenths slower than driver 1. If they finish 1:10.243, that means they're 3 tenths faster than driver 1, right? So now you see where the difference comes. It gets even tinier. A few hundredths off means that the gap is only about 0.01 to 0.09 seconds. For example, driver 1 does 1:10.543 and driver 2 does 1:10.573. They are 3 hundredths slower than driver 1. Undercut versus overcut. So let's talk about tires for a minute. Fresh tires always give you more speed, but you also have to warm them up and get them to the right temperature. So you'll see, especially during formation lap, right at the beginning of the race, the drivers will keep like weaving on the track. That's because they're trying to get those tires to the right temperature. We talked about slicks in episode 1. Each team has a soft, medium and hard set of tires. Soft tires warm up faster, they give you more speed, but they don't last very long. Whereas hard tires take the longest to warm up, but will also last you longer. Medium is, well, somewhere in between.
When teams decide when to bring in their cars to change tires, they are not just looking at the wear and tear of their own car, they also see where their competition is. An undercut would mean that pitting earlier than your rival to gain time on fresher tires before your rival pits. If it works, you can overtake them when they exit the pits. An overcut would be staying longer on worn tires, hoping to gain time while your rival struggles to warm up their fresh tires. It works best when track conditions improve or if fresher tires don't give an immediate advantage.
You have to remember that tire degradation is a real thing that you can see on the track. As cars keep driving, small parts of rubber will fall off called marbles. All F1 cars need to be at a particular weight at the end of a race. This includes the weight of the driver. So if a driver ate an extra donut during Christmas, he risks his car being over the limit. But during the race, drivers can lose up to 2 to 3 kilos from sweating. And the car becomes lighter because the fuel drops. So how do you make sure that the weight of your car is right on regulation? Well, your team will tell you to do a cool down lap at the end of the race and pick up all the marbles on the track. Since the tires are hot, the marbles will stick to them and add that extra weight.
That leaves less marbles for us as fans to go get onto the racetrack and pick them for souvenirs.
Have you picked up souvenirs at any of the tracks?
I have picked up one. I am not sure if it is a marble, but I like to believe that it is one, and I picked it up at Kota.
It is a marble. Believe it in your heart. And it came from Max's car.
It did come from Max's car. It means so much to me.
Did anyone get disqualified for not being at the weight limit at Kota that year? Because they can just fully blame you on it.
Was that George? Was that year? I'm not sure if it was George. Did he lose out on podium?
Spa. Yeah. George was in Spa when he lost out on that. Like, yes. See, someone like you made George lose.
Finally, we have to talk about flags. Checkered flag. The race or the session is over. Time to celebrate or back up. Yellow flag. Danger ahead. Slow it down and no overtaking. A single yellow. A minor incident. Drivers must lift off slightly. A double yellow. Drivers must be prepared to stop if needed. Red flag. Session has stopped due to serious incident or dangerous conditions like a heavy rain or a big crash. All cars return to the pits. Green flag. Track is clear. Go racing. usually seen at the start of the race or after a yellow flag zone ends?
Blue flags are used when a faster car that's likely a leader is lapping you. The circuit is connected, which means at some point the first guy is going to meet the guy at the back. The blue flags let a back marker know to move over and let the leader through. Then there is the black and white flag. This is a warning for unsportsmanlike behavior, that is, forcing another driver off the track. Do it again and penalties are coming. Usually we see this for track limits violation. F1 drivers must keep at least one wheel within the white lines at all times. Sometimes you'll see them spin just on the outside of the curb, but it won't be a violation because somehow they manage to keep at least one wheel on the track. It is quite beautiful to see, to be honest. When they exceed track limits, the first warning, the race control notes it. Second and third warnings, you're on thin ice, black and white flags. Fourth violation, 5-second time penalty. Multiple violations, possible 10-second penalty or a harsher punishment. So why is this a big deal? Going wide might help a driver carry more speed through a corner, giving them an unfair advantage. So the stewards enforce limits to keep the racing fair.
You don't want to lose out on a podium just because of a warning or any of these penalties. I think that is the biggest deal, right?
It is. In fact, I remember there was this one race in 2023 where Max was already like 30 seconds ahead of everyone as per usual. That was the case in 2023.
That was the glory of 2023. There was no tension, no risks.
And he had already got like a second warning, and his engineer GP was like, just keep it within the white lines, please.
Yeah.
And then Max asked, but what is the fastest lap time?
Oh, yeah.
And GP was like, listen, it's with someone else. Just stay on the track, please. Can you not get a time penalty? And then Max went on to setting the fastest lap anyway.
And getting that extra point.
And then GP was like, okay, fantastic. Can you keep it within the white lines now? He's like, yeah.
I got it.
So that's a wrap on the Australian Grand Prix, from the track's history to strategy, key terms, and race prep. Now, you're all set to watch the season opener with fresh perspective. But before we sign off, let me hear from my guest. Aditi, what is your boldest prediction for the 2025 season?
I'm going bold, saying that Red Bull will come back to glory. We would win the constructors. We would win the drivers' champions. We would play the song, We Are the Champion. We'll play the song loud in a garage. And we'll be back to glory. Max would be back to glory. Red Bull will be the best team. And we sign off on it, before the regulations. That is my boldest prediction.
I mean, you saw preseason testing, right? Like, Red Bull is...
I stand to be Delulu.
I'll give you this. Max might win the championship because he is the only team, like from the top teams, he's the only team that doesn't have their second driver, stealing points from him, right? Liam might be good, but I don't know if he's going to be that close to winning, right? So that way, since he tends to keep all the points, maybe. But Red Bull, I mean, fine. Let's feed your Delulu. I'm okay with it.
What is your prediction? What is your boldest prediction for this year?
Based on this, I don't know why. Like, it's a sad one for me, but I feel like they might replace Yuki Tsunoda mid-race. Like, because you know how Red Bull is very brutal, right? With their drivers. If they don't perform well, they will just replace them immediately. So I think, because see, Yuki doesn't have a space for the next season, right? He's a Honda driver. Honda's not associated with Red Bull anymore. So he doesn't have that space in the Red Bull family. And they are really looking to pull up this new guy called Arvid Lindblad. He's in the F3 or F2 seasons right now. So if they want to pull up someone new, they're gonna have to get rid of Yuki. So that's my boldest prediction from the Red Bull family.
You're gonna be a very sad fan when that happens. I mean, I know what a big fan you are of Yuki. Oh man, that is gonna be sad if that happens. I hope it doesn't come true. for your sake
I
and
know.
for
I
the
hope
fans,
so
the Yuki
too,
fans.
yeah. But then I'm also like being realistic. The Alpha Tauri team or Toro Rosso or V Carb, whatever they're called, are technically a development team for Red Bull.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they would want new blood in there, and Yuki's been there 5 years now. So it's time, buddy. It's time.
Did you see his spin at at the F175 show?
F175. Oh, how cool was
Ballsy! That is so ballsy. Like, hey, let me just like give it a spin, guys. That was such a cool donut that he did there.
Apparently he has the same car, and he was saying in an interview, like, initially they told him not to do anything crazy. He looked at the security guards and he's like, whatever, I have nothing to lose. Spin.
Nice. That was a good one.
To our amazing listeners, what do you think? Drop your hot takes in the comments, send us a message, or tag us in your wildest predictions. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share F101 with friends, because this community is just getting started. If you have any queries or you want to be a friend on the pod, please reach out to me on Instagram. The link is in the description. Thank you, Aditi, for being my guest on the show. I've been your host, Nisha, and I'll see you on the next episode of F101 with Friends.